Good evening. My name is Martha Poyatos, and I'm the Executive Officer for LAFCo, the Local Agency Formation Commission. And I'm here tonight to provide a presentation of a report that's been issued dated September 23rd. There's reports at the front entrance that talks about and explains the issues surrounding the Los Troncos County Water District and alternatives that exist in terms of governance and continuing services of the district and keeping the property tax the district receives local. What I'd like to do briefly is just explain what LAFCo is, and I'm going to try to loosen up and smile a little bit because it's pretty dry. LAFCo is an independent commission that was created by state law in 1963 to exist in each county of the state and regulate the boundaries of cities and special districts. It's an independent commission and it operates under a specific set of government code 56,000 and 57,000 that can be very difficult to understand. And so when I write the reports, I try to go back and say, what does this mean to the resident? But tonight I'm here to answer questions and try to explain more clearly what issues surround your district. LAFCo regulates the boundaries of cities and special districts, and LAFCo has authority and responsibility to regulate the services a district may provide. So in order for a district to add a new service, it requires an application to LAFCo and LAFCo approval. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. LAFCo is also required to establish spheres of influence, which are the plan for the boundaries and governance of an agency, and to periodically review them. And in conjunction, LAFCo prepares these municipal service reviews that are also very codified and mandated by state law that are studies of the finances, governance, accountability, efficiencies of local government. And one of LAFCo's basic missions is eliminating overlapping service area and providing for more efficient municipal services. And I think for many, the layers of local government that exist in our county aren't really understood. And so, first of all, what is a special district? It is a form of government, and I think you're keenly aware of that. Yes?
Yes. Could you explain who LAFCO's report to on the state level and whether or not?
What I'd like to do is, I will address that right now, but what I'd like to do, unless I'm saying something that sounds like Martian, I'd like to wait for questions until the end so that we can kind of get through this and go back to questions. So LAFCo as an independent commission is the ultimate authority for boundaries in counties. And if beyond LAFCo's decision, the next place to go is the court. So LAFCo has ultimate decision-making authority. When you look at local government in a county, we have the county, which is a subdivision of the state of California. It provides municipal services in unincorporated areas, but it is also a subdivision of the state, and it has the overriding responsibility of providing state-mandated programs like health services and human services. In San Mateo County, we have 20 cities, and then we have a multitude of unincorporated areas that, if they're in an urban area, they are designated to be in the sphere of influence of a city. And so in the case of Los Troncos Woods, the unincorporated community is in the sphere of influence of the town of Portola Valley, designating that if a city can provide service, Portola Valley is the city that's best able to do it, and that is the city that the community would annex to if it became part of a city. And then we have special districts. We have independent special districts, which one example is the Los Troncos County Water District. The board is elected by the voters in the district. It is a form of government. It provides enabling legislation is how it was formed, and it was formed under State Water Code, Section 30,000, and that is what sets the parameters of what the district is authorized to do. The districts, of course, have defined boundaries, which are regulated by LAFCo, and the districts are also subject to many other laws, and those include the Brown Act for public meetings, the Public Records Act, California Environmental Quality Act, which is complying with environmental review when projects are undertaken by a special district. Are there any questions about special districts that I didn't answer? So what I wanted to do briefly is not, and this isn't really the PowerPoint that I presented for tonight. The PowerPoint is on a memory stick in my office, so I did a real quick, with the key facts, a PowerPoint that has the key information for you. So in terms of the history of the Los Trancos County Water District, the district itself was formed in 1955 under Water Code, and it was formed to acquire the system that serves your community, acquire it, and improve it. There were a few annexations in the history of the district, most recently the Blue Oak subdivision, which was annexed in 1996, I believe, 96, and as an annexation to an enterprise district, meaning a district that charges a fee for service, there was no property tax transferred to the district for the portion of the Blue Oaks that was annexed. So in essence, it's a zone of the district that does not contribute property tax to the district like the rest of the territory does. So the district was formed in 1955, and LAFCOs were created in 1963 to regulate special districts and cities. In 1978, Prop 13 was passed, and this is a very important date for all public agencies that receive property tax revenue. Prop 13, as you know, limited property tax to 1% of your assessed value. It proportionately redistributed that property tax amongst all the agencies in the county based on what they were assessing before Prop 13. And it was actually unintentional that enterprise districts that can charge a fee for service receive property tax. The intent of Prop 13 was to encourage agencies to wean themselves of reliance on property tax if they could charge a fee for service. And property tax is intended for non-enterprise activities like fire, police, park and rec, etc. And later I have a slide for you that shows how that property tax was redistributed to your district. And then in 1994, LAFCo law was amended to require LAFCo approval for activation of service not previously provided. And as I said, 1997 was the Blue Oaks annexation. And in 2005, Los Trancos County Water District sold their water system to Cal Water. That reduced your water rates because you became part of a larger system that had economies of scale. And the district continues to receive property tax and has gone through several permutations of establishing which programs and services would be funded by that property tax. Initially, it was rebates against your property tax bill from Cal Water, and that was phased out, and then it became your incentive program that you have, and this report details the different programs that are available. And more recently, the district undertook addressing the stormwater runoff and drainage problems that exist in your community because of your topography. And also very important, the district has focused on fire safety, and so some of your property tax contributed to the district has gone towards enhanced fire safety initiatives in your community. In terms of the budget and revenues and expenditures of the district, this staff report has the district's budget and audit and discussion of the budget. The annual property tax is about $290,000 a year, and that's comprised of the base property tax that was originally established after Prop 13, meaning a share of the countywide property tax, and then each year after that, the incremental growth within your district. The district has uniquely, it has a long-term debt of a little over $600,000 that's a loan to the Blue Oak subdividers. And that loan is an interest-free loan that will come due when 32 homes are built in the Los Trancos subdivision, in the Blue Oak subdivision. And that loan is also set up in a manner that repayment is very generous, and it amounts to about $9,000 a year once it comes due. Looking at the budget, if you've reviewed the budget, the 2013-14 expenditures exceed property tax, and page 9 of the report and the budget both illustrate that. The issues that are, I think, key to your district are the identified essential needs that compete with the rebate programs that have been in place. Some accomplishments of the district include the BAG report that was for the drainage, and also, BAG report was for the Ramona Road. Both? Okay, Ramona Road and some drainage. And the BAG report that was prepared by the district ended up being used by the County of San Mateo in work that was done for the Ramona Road repairs. Also, the district is in the process of preparing a storm drainage master plan that's in a draft form right now, and that identifies about $3.2 million of needed storm drain infrastructure in your community. And also, fire safety is, of course, important. But one of the things that the report does identify is that these key, kind of really what you would call essential services in the public sector, stormwater runoff, fire safety, are essential versus the rebate programs, which are not really traditionally offered by public agencies, not at the level that they're offered here, certainly. So that activation of powers that I talked about, the law that was enacted in 1994, is Government Code Section 56824, and it's a regulatory, not advisory provision of the law. It requires LAFCo approval to activate an inactive service. So under Water Code, the Water District has a set of services that are authorized. Primarily that's water, and then also sewer is permitted under Water Code, fire safety, and storm drain. And very limited park and recreation. Park and recreation in the Water Code is really driven by these large water agencies that have reservoirs and use those for park and recreation. And while it's not explicit in the LAFCo law, there is an assumption that you need to be actively providing your primary power if you're going to activate one of those other powers that are associated with that primary power. In the LAFCo report, there is an analysis of a district dissolution that would establish a successor agency to basically be the recipient of those property tax, supplant the district, and provide the services that are identified as needed for the community. And I was asked to provide examples of those in San Mateo County. And in the county, there are many drainage maintenance districts that provide drainage maintenance and initially some capital improvement. The problem with the drainage maintenance districts is they were established before Prop 13, and so when Prop 13 was passed, the proportional share of those districts countywide was very low, so those districts get a very low share of property tax. This situation is unique probably in California, in which rather than trying to create a district from nothing, you actually have a district that would start with $290,000 a year in property tax. There are also county service areas in the county that serve unincorporated areas. There's CSA County Service Area 7, which serves La Honda and is the water provider. There's County Service Area 11, that is the water provider for Pescadero. And there's a county service area in the Highlands unincorporated community in San Mateo that funds police and fire, and they do that through a contract with the county sheriff and with CAL FIRE. Lastly, there's the county has a San Mateo County flood control zones. Within it, it has subzones. This area is already part of the San Francisco Creek flood control zone. In Colma, in South San Francisco and Colma, there's a Colma flood control zone that actually has a Colma Creek subzone for an area within it that has enhanced property tax revenue. And so that is an example of another tool that could be used to continue to capture the property tax in your community and keep it local. And LAFCo, in approving or considering applications, if approved, has the authority to condition formation on establishment of one of those types of districts to be the successor for the district. And it's important to note, too, that we talked about the debt. So the district going forward would, if there were a successor agency, the successor agency would become successor not just to the revenue, but also to any of the liabilities and obligations, including the debt, and provisions would need to be made for that. And then lastly, LAFCo applications require a proposed budget and a plan for service. So that is the vehicle that the district and the residents in LAFCo would use to see how this district, if it were dissolved and if a successor agency were established, how that would play out. What would the revenue be used for? What would if you've established priority of services that include primarily storm drain or stormwater control and fire safety, how would that be appropriated in a budget? So the alternatives that are discussed in the report include continued existence of the district with application for a sphere of influence amendment, because right now the sphere designation is that it be dissolved. And so there'd have to be a sphere designation that would say the district should continue to exist, and activation of powers under the law that I referenced. The challenges with that application and with that path are that LAFCo, as I said, must consider underlying existing agencies that can already provide the service, and LAFCO is supposed to discourage overlapping service delivery and overlapping boundaries of agencies that provide the same service. There's also dissolution with long-term successor for services, which is what I just discussed in terms of the different vehicles that exist to implement that and to make sure that it is a permanent revenue source. And then there's dissolution with no long-term successor. And so an example of that is the Skyline County Water District, which sold its water system to Cal Water because it had the highest rates, I believe, in the Bay Area. And the district was a volunteer board like this board, and it wanted to get out of the water business. And so when it sold its system to Cal Water, it applied to LAFCO to dissolve, and LAFCO processed that application, held the mandatory protest hearing that was required at the time, and nobody showed up. And so that's an example of dissolution of the district with no long-term successor. What happened to the property tax? The property tax was redistributed to the other agencies that shared territory with the district. And so I talked about Prop 13, and Prop 13, as I said, basically limited property tax to 1% of assessed value, which at the time was a drastic reduction and a catastrophic reduction in property tax revenue for local government. And it also created a new trend of local government looking towards fees and other revenue sources and fiscalization of land use, looking for retail, et cetera. And so what it did was it took the total property tax and it redistributed it proportionally. So Los Troncos County Water District is made up of several what are called tax rate areas that have slightly different distributions of this because of the agencies that they share the territory with, and because of tax rates that might have existed in these other agencies. But this is an example of a sample tax rate area, and these digits, these are actually carried out 8 digits. So I've done some rounding, and if this goes to 1.01, don't shoot me. So what you see is that the county gets about 22% of the property tax. The county operates a county library system that is partnering with cities to provide library services. The elementary school receives 19%. High school district receives about 14%. College district, 6%. Woodside Fire receives about 16%. Fire districts in the county, in general, receive between 15% and 17% of the property tax. And your San Francisco Creek Flood Control Zone receives 0.21 of 1%. The Water District receives 10.6% about, or 10% is a good way to think of it. The Regional Open Space District receives, you can see the shares all the way down. And what's interesting too about this is on this side you have, with the exception of the county, you really have what I would call local districts that are getting your property tax is going to a district that provides a local type service. And on the right-hand side, you have more regional agencies that your property tax is going into a service that's considered just a general public benefit. Any questions about the slide? This is the percent of 1%, so this totals to 1%. Well, if we took an example, say, of assessed valuation of $300 million, you'd take 1% of that, and then you would say this is the share everybody gets of that 1%. Is that clear to everybody? So if that's the existing model, and so if the district, under the model of dissolving the district, but keeping property tax local and continuing the services that the district sees as residents see as high priority, then what you would see is establishment of a Los Troncos maintenance district, a Los Troncos flood control district, Los Troncos county service area. In any one of these cases, it would be a district that would be governed by the Board of Supervisors, administered by the county, and the services that are currently provided would be managed by the county. So you're keeping everything else stays the same, and you have a successor agency that would continue to receive the property tax and, of course, continue also to be responsible for any liabilities the district has. Questions?
Right now, we're exercising undue amounts of control over what is happening within the district. Under this plan, what kind of control do we have over, aren't we ceding some measure of control under that?
Well, as I said, with the application, what you do is you have a plan for providing service, and it would designate a certain service plan for the district to be implemented by the county. You vote for the Board of Supervisors. You already work with the county. The County Public Works Department has partnered with the district on the Ramona Road repair. The County Public Works Department is already responsible for the roads, and also the county has the flood control responsibility. So in terms of local control, that is something that you weigh against the cost of local control and weigh against the challenges that a small district has in coordinating and partnering with many other agencies. Other questions about the slide?
I thought that under these different alternatives, you could set up citizens advisory groups who would be your link to the local community. Could you talk a little bit about that?
There are provisions in the county. There are actual models in the county. There's the two county service areas that are for water have a rate advisory body that are residents that are chosen, they volunteer and then appointed by the Board of Supervisors to work with the county on administering the district. Some of the challenges that you're going to see is that local control, and here, the observation is that local control has resulted in a fluctuation of what service priorities have been set and where money is spent. And what you will see, I think, if you have a county-governed district, is that you're going into it with the notion that there's going to be certain economies of scale and expertise the county can provide that the district cannot provide right now. And you'll also see that, no, you don't get to tell the county public works director what shape manhole cover to use. But for example, the drainage plan that's in circulation draft now, once that is finalized, that is a tool that would be used, just like the BAG report was used by the county in doing the Ramona Road repairs. So you do need to, one of the considerations in moving forward and looking at for this new board and for the residents is looking at what are our priorities and how's the best way to achieve them, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of having an independent district. What are the advantages and disadvantages of transferring to having a county-governed district that manages the property tax revenue? And I say this with caution, but this report that talks about the attention this district has garnered from the state legislature and from the state analyst's office, being a district that sold its water system and has spent the money on other things, there are also other considerations the state is taking about property tax revenue for enterprise districts. It is not a guaranteed revenue source. There are possibilities that revenue that is currently going to enterprise districts could, through the legislature, be redistributed, as we know the state's really good at doing that, for other purposes. And I'm not saying that as a threat, I'm saying that as a real consideration at the state level. And those are considerations too that I think the board and the residents would want to take into consideration. So in terms of, moving forward, and what I'll do is I will, with some narrative, provide to the district the real PowerPoint that's back at my office, and make that available to you on the website so that you have that. The moving forward, my recommended steps as a LAFCo staff are that the district board study resolution of the key issues. And one of the things that I didn't mention that is significant and important to the district and the residents are it's listed as 3 parcels. There's technically 4 parcels, but there's 3 parcels that the district owns. One is adjacent to the creek and not really, I think, very useful for the district as an entity or the community for that part because it's landlocked. And the other 2 are your property on Lake Road and the adjacent lake on Lake Road. And one of the challenges that the district also faces if the district decides to be dissolved is finding a successor agency that could be the steward for those properties. And the tools that would exist for that are, first of all, identifying agencies that could become successor, and they include Town of Portola Valley, County of San Mateo, Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, Stanford, Woodside Fire District. And so the first step in analyzing and studying what route to take is identify the key issues, and I wanted to make sure I brought up the land, but the key issues also include what are the primary and essential services that you want your property tax used for. And it seems like the evidence, the record shows that fire safety and stormwater runoff are 2 basic essential services. And then, of course, the disposition of the district-owned lands. Moving forward, it would make sense to actually contact the district board to contact the agencies that could be successor and have information about the lands, work with LAFCo further on what tools would be made available to have open space easements, because the interest is to keep the lands in a natural state, but also to have some incentive for an agency, either a revenue stream or a one-time fund that would be set aside for the stewardship of those lands. And then work with LAFCo and the Department of Public Works on adopting or developing just a sample plan for service and a sample budget that would be what it would look like if the district were dissolved and you established a successor agency like a county governed district to provide the service. And so, one of the things I want to focus on is that LAFCo operates under, as I said, Government Code Sections 56,000 and 57,000. And so one of the benefits, I think, nobody looks really keen on my presentation, but one of the benefits really is when you live in a community, you pay your property tax, you know what kind of your local service needs are. You're not necessarily sure about, sometimes even some communities aren't sure about who provides the service. But this gives you an opportunity to understand what legal authority your district has, what services it provides, what the budget looks like, and then how your property tax elsewhere, other property tax is distributed. So that concludes my presentation, and what I'd like to do is open it up to questions about the report.